Hi. Good morning,
Hi,
Jay.
everybody. Good morning, Kate. How are
Hey,
you?
good. I'm so good. How are you? Good? Are you
I'm
good too?
good. My voice is a little raspy because Seattle has the smoke and the fires, so they have everybody shut their windows. So I'm a little raspy, but I'm doing good. I'm here and I'm ready.
You're a
And there's
trooper.
we have thank
The
you.
smoke is coming from fires up there, coming from where's the smoke coming from? You're in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, yeah. So it's coming from places around the Northwest because we've got nothing but evergreen trees. But we also sometimes get the smoke from Canada, or if there's fires in your spot in California. It just depends on how the wind blows.
Right.
But I know that we've just had, the normal warning of the smoke that's actually happening within the state. That's just
Right.
seeming to blow around. So
Right.
it's supposed to get better. But
Awesome.
yeah, it's
We
affecting everybody. So
we had rain all
yeah.
morning. So I stood out my front door and said, "Go north, go north, go north," because we had rain. Yeah, we've had rain all morning from the hurricane, which is really
Oh,
interesting to have rain in the middle of August. But this is our new normal, so that's what is.
yeah.
Whatever it is,
How
it is.
you're not a
So I can't tell if it's my computer that is frozen or if it's Jay's computer that is frozen. So if somebody could let me know what's happening there, that would be great. Maybe we'll need to come back out, come back in.
it's it
Is it?
yeah, it's our internet. Like I said, everything is a little wonky around here.
That's okay. Don't worry. I want to say hello to anybody that's joining us that's new. I'm Kate, the Dream Detective, and
Can
this
you hear
is,
me?
yes. So you want to introduce yourself, Jay? MaJesstic Oracle? Okay,
Is
so
it
we
frozen still?
it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. So we're
Hi, I'm
good.
Jay with MaJesstic Oracle.
Okay. So we are exploring and sharing with
Am
everyone
I frozen again? Oh,
our
Mercury retrograde, don't do this.
you seem fine. You're okay. You're still there. You're moving. It's okay.
Okay.
So we wanted to share our experiences around healing because when we
Okay. You were
act
cutting out, but now you're good.
now I'm good. Okay. So when we share our experiences with healing with others, we are hoping to provide hope when medical professionals or other established um, processes are not working to perhaps suggest that there's other ways of healing based on our own experience. So to start out with, I want to read our disclaimer, which is fairly long. So now's a good time to go get a cup of coffee if you want one, or a soda or something, because this is a pretty long disclaimer. So, the information included, but not limited to text, graphics, images, and other materials contained in this video are for informational and spiritual purposes only. No material on this site is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician and other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regime. And never disregard professional medical advice or delay it in seeking it because of something that you have heard or read on this website or within this video. So we just want that to be very clear. We're not advising anyone. We're not dispensing medical advice. We're simply sharing our history of health and medical issues that have come along the way. And as I was mentioning to Jay beforehand, it's very interesting to me that very spiritual people often have had multiple medical related journeys that have deepened their spirituality, that have allowed them to understand the connection between spirit and mind and body, and how we have to acknowledge that as those pieces come together and as those pieces thrive, that there is a connection and that we need to all pay attention to them individually as well as sharing with others what has worked for us. So if we don't say hi everybody. I noticed we have Teresa and Akila and Hypnicity joining us early this morning. So we certainly appreciate it. So whenever you are joining us,
Yeah.
just know that the information that's coming to you is coming to you at the right time. It is sent to you with love and with the highest intentions of meaning something and providing insight. So it's meant for hope. It's meant for support. It's meant to uplift you. And today we're going to be listening to beautiful Jay tell her, or one of her health journeys, one of her challenges that started in the early 90s. So do you want to take it from
Well,
there?
early 2000s. It was late 90s, early 2000s that it kind of boiled over, but
How did it
that's the
start?
span. Well, I was in high school, and it was kind of a 1-2 punch where I got mono, and then I also got in a car accident. I was rear-ended, and I was pretty active playing sports. I always have, and going from that to not being able to move or get out of bed. And they did x-rays and did all that, and they couldn't find anything wrong. So they just kept saying, rest, ice, and you'll be fine. And, fast forward a couple of years, once I'm getting out of high school, I wasn't fine. I was worse. I didn't, you know, progress and do the things that I wanted to do, like, go to school and get a track scholarship and all these things that I had planned. Um, and it started to get worse. And I didn't know what was wrong. So I went back to the doctor. And at that point, they did more x-rays. They sent me to physical therapy and all the stuff that, they kind of do at first when you have an accident. And it wasn't helping. I was getting worse. So they said, well, it's all in your head. You gotta, kind of think about, what you've been through. There's a trauma. It's all in your head because there's nothing wrong. None of the tests are showing. And then I went to another doctor, and I was told that I was crazy, and it was all in my head. And
My gosh.
that was really difficult because going from being active to waking up and having, my shoulder not be able to kind of raise over my arm was really difficult, because I'm driving and I'm, doing all these things as like the oldest child, and I couldn't function as just a normal person. And so I just kind of went into a depression because I started thinking, I don't know how I could be crazy, but what else could it be? They can't find anything. There's nothing.
It is
Um,
interesting. It is
so
interesting how our medical professionals have that authority, have that sense of knowing all, right? That
mhm,
we give them that perception, we give them that sort of honor, and take their words for okay. That's the bottom line. That's the way it is because I think
exactly.
most of us were raised that we need to respect people in authority, and medical professionals often have that so much education, so much knowledge that we give them that sort of a blank check that says, "Okay, we're going to trust what you say." So I've been told that I was crazy on many, many, many occasions. So
Well, I'm glad we're in the same club because the club of crazy is fun.
yeah,
And you might try it sometime. It just gets you away from some of the real stuff. But no, in all seriousness, it's it just made me start to just question everything. And in hindsight, looking back, realizing, I'm trusting the doctors, and I understand. But looking at it from the point of, well, if they really couldn't find anything, and this was back at that time when everything was so brand new,
right,
um, and the and trying to figure out how to diagnose it because it wasn't anything that was within the bone or a broken or sprained or anything like that. Because I
right.
would just explain to them that I just had pain all over. It wasn't in one area. It would just change throughout the entire, body.
Right.
Um, and that was really a struggle for that first, time out of high school when you're trying to find yourself. And me, I was just trying to find the diagnosis. So
Right.
my whole priority had changed, yeah, from what I thought it would be.
Yes, Mary, we have had that experience where the problem must not be in a book. It must be, on us. And so thank you for sharing that with us. But
Yes,
once
yes.
you got to a place where the conditions were becoming more severe, what happened next then? What happened for you?
Um, there were points when it just everything kind of got locked up. Like my whole body just kind of would kind of freak out on itself. And there was a couple of emergency room, visits of the same thing, making sure they're checking. And by this point, they're having me keep a journal, and I'm keeping journals that are, this thick of just the symptoms every day. And it would, after a while, I just put same and then would flip same, flip, because I was tired of writing the exact same thing.
Yes.
Um, and I tried doing the whole, well, you need to get out and exercise and move your body. And even though as much pain as I was in everywhere, I was like, I'll try. I'm not going to get out and run and do what I normally do, but I'll
Right.
just get up, move around. Like, trying to just do the simplest things was exhausting. I was so tired. I
Right.
slept a lot. Um, that's when they said, oh, you must be depressed because you're sleeping a lot.
Hmm.
Well, the pain was just, starting to consume, and it was just exhausting to try to function. And I realized that my body was trying to overcompensate, and it was just so tiring. So that was really debilitating because I had already slept a lot anyways. I love to do that, but now I can't enjoy it because I'm in this pain. So the next phase was they finally, started me on some medication, and that was kind of helping, but not really. And I started looking into a couple of things, and I heard from a friend of mine that she had, seen a doctor, and she had had something similar happen. And I go see this doctor, and finally they say, do you know what FMS is, or fibromyalgia? And I said, no, it's something with the fiber of some sort. I didn't know if that meant I was constipated. I didn't know. So I
Yeah.
was like, fiber, so they said that is like a chronic condition. It's very similar to chronic fatigue syndrome, but it's pain all over the body. So they gave me a diagram, and they had me pinpoint everything on the diagram where I was hurting. And it just looked like I had taken, a red marker and just decided to just throw the pin at it, and it just exploded. It was everywhere.
Wow.
So it was on every point that, and then some. There was extra points on because it had to be on both sides of the body. So that's when they diagnosed me, because there wasn't, like I said, an actual mechanical test. It was just through these different ways of pinpointing, and they would touch and feel. So at that point, I was so happy. I wasn't happy that I had this, but I knew I had to research what it was. But I was just happy that I wasn't crazy. I was validated in what I was feeling, and I wasn't being dramatic or overly whiny, because at some point, that's what it was,
Yeah.
And I had to wear like an arm sling and a back brace around my lower back. And I was still going to therapy and still doing all those things, and still on. And this was back, like I said, in the early 2000s, when doctors weren't as strict, not even as strict, when it came to giving medication. And I'm in my early 20s, so I'm thinking I need to listen to what the doctor's saying, and take the medication. And so I did.
Hmm.
Um, and that was hard in itself, to try to figure out how to function in that with the brace, and what do I do now?
Hmm.
Not a lot of people know about this, have it, understand that I look totally normal. I sound normal. Well, not right now, but I sound normal. But there's something wrong with me,
Hmm.
and so that was an identity thing that I had to just kind of contend with. You look perfectly fine. Why can't you get up and do that?
Hmm.
But then at one point, the doctors were like, no, you're not going to be able to, do certain things. Once they found the diagnosis, then it was all the things I cannot do.
Right.
And I listened. I listened. It was everything that I couldn't do, and I had to get a handicap pass because it was difficult to walk. My arm started hurting. My rheumatoid, when they took my blood, they found out I had rheumatoid arthritis. All of these things were, starting to unravel. And it was like, as he's telling me all these things that I would be going through, and it'd be a struggle to do this and do that, um, I believed it, and it absolutely was a struggle. I even kind of tried to switch it up and say, no, I feel better. Let me see if I can do this or that. But I would be able to, but I'd be down for a couple of days. The recovery time was sometimes just not worth the activity.
So
Um,
let me just jump in right there, because I think that when we take on the belief that what we're hearing is truth, that it sets a course of response. It changes your trajectory of where you thought you were going in your journey. And that what you just said about how you said, well, maybe I can change this. Maybe I can, those little inklings, those little nudges that say, hey, what if I do this? So even in the stages that you were in, dealing with all of the effects of it, the sling, the handicap placard, the back brace, that must have been interesting on a date. Just all of that kind of experience, but somewhere there within you was a nudging, right? Somewhere within you there was a nudging that
yes.
says, maybe if I try this, or maybe if I try that. So I just find that really fascinating that you can identify and remember that, even if it took a few days to recover. So tell us about what was going on in your life with um, as it progressed, and as you felt that your life was not going to be the way that you saw it, your relationships, your what was going on for you.
Well, this time I was in, like I said, my early 20s, and I was just turning 21 and trying to hang out with my friends and go to the bars or the clubs and go dancing. I loved to dance, and it was something I've always done. And to try to find an outfit that goes with a back brace was really hard. And no one seemed to understand because, except for someone who's in that situation or someone older. So all of my friends were like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, in order to kind of keep my back up to where my spine stops burning, because at this point my spine was burning because the job that I had, I was working for different car dealerships, and I was still trying to do some, modeling stuff here and there, but you had to wear heels, and there was all of these like things that involved what a normal, young person wears at this time. And I had to compensate by trying to wear lower heels and then wear the back brace that was the thinnest possible, and not and wearing some more flowy shirts, and just trying to make it work. And at one point, I think the movie Romy and Michelle's high school reunion was out, and it was kind of something we would joke about because we were like, well, we could maybe like bedazzle the back brace and wear it on the outside and make it like a corset, like trying to figure out different fashion ways
Mm-hmm.
um, to do this. And so when it came to like dating, oh, it was so exhausting anyways, just to do all that, that I just had to
Oh, it
just be
does.
honest and be like, look, this is what's happened. I was in a car accident, take it or leave it, but I'm not, this is me. And my husband was the one for me in that way. So
Mhm.
he stuck by me and watched me, grow and go through and change. And we started a family. And um, but that whole time of just adjusting to that world, and like I said, when you go out somewhere and someone's looking at you, or I would get harassed about if I was parking in the handicap, um, you know, older people would yell at me and say, "That's for people who have problems." And I'm like, there was one point where there was a confrontation because I actually took my back brace off. It was one of those bad days where you're just in a lot of pain. You don't want to be messed with. And I
Right.
took my back brace off, and I was like, "Is this good enough for you?" And I remember my dad was like, "Just get in the car, hon. Just get in the car." And then he got out and said something, but I was supposed to roll my windows up and not listen. But, he just kind of scolded him a little because he's like, you don't know what goes on in people's personal life. But it was just the fact that, it was an outer shell that people were judging.
Right. So
And
So at
yeah.
that point, you had support. You had support. You had family that was supporting you. You had a
Mhm.
relationship that was blooming and going somewhere that was very supportive and very honest about what the limitations were and the acceptance. Okay, that
Yeah.
acceptance portion is a really big part of having the energy to just get up in the morning, to know that your immediate environment, your immediate surroundings, the people that are around you, love you, care for you, are looking at this as
Hmm.
something that that is happening to you, but it is not you. This is not you.
Yeah.
You are not this thing that is happening.
Hmm.
They understood it to be something that was happening around you. And I understand there was
Yeah.
a tipping point, that there was a point where your circumstances changed. Perhaps
Yeah.
maybe when your daughter was little. Is that right? When your daughter was little?
Yeah. Yeah. My circumstances started to change at this point because, we get pregnant, we have her, and she's fine, and she's growing, and she's developing, and she's going, and everything turned out well. But during the pregnancy, I did have to be on bed rest for 7 of the months,
Oh,
and so that was interesting in itself. Yeah.
oh my goodness.
And so I was on bed rest, and because just the complications of everything, and it just being such a fragile time, and me still being young and dealing with all of these health issues. It was just necessary. So that's when it was on military mode. My husband, stay in the bed, and marching to the standing outside after I'm using the restroom. Like, there was a strict, and I understood, because this is our child. But after a while, it's like, oh, I want to go. Now I'm really getting antsy. I want to do something. Like, now that I'm being told I can't. Now I'm really starting to not like that. I don't want to be told. So she comes in, and she's good, and she's healthy, and as all of this is going on, and she's growing, I'm still doing the physical therapy, and I'm still on the medication, but I'm extremely tired. Like, after all of this, I'm having worse pain, because going from the change of being this big to then trying to kind of go back and forth, it was just a lot. And that's when the arthritis really flared up too. And my knees were really bad. I couldn't stand up my whole weight. Um, and I had to wear knee braces at this time. It was just all of these extra things. I had to have special pillows where, I slept with them in between my arms. It was just everything from the back store that they had for people I
Wow.
was using.
Wow.
Um, but as she, was starting to go to school, and I was staying at home, because
Yeah.
holding a full-time job, taking care of it was just something that, thank God, that my husband understood and was fine with. That I watch you try. Like, I've watched you try to work and just do this. And this was before our daughter. But now all of this, just the exhausting, he just wanted me to have a good quality of life,
Yes.
and my daughter to have a good quality of life. And so he went to work. I stayed home and took care of our daughter. And then, my parents was really, there for us. They still are, but they would take her on the weekends, so I could get a break, and I would just sleep all day and all night, if I wasn't doing anything, or we didn't have events,
Right.
or, family things to go to. I was
Yes.
just constantly resting.
Right.
And I got used to that rest. It was, and they said, well, fibromyalgia makes you tired, it makes you sleepy, but not one time, Kate, did they say, but we're going to get you through this. We're going to work through this. We're going to find something. They never said that it was going to be over. I was waiting for, like, when you get in a car accident, you break something. Okay, well, it'll be 6 weeks to, however many. They never said it'll be done. And
Yeah,
so that in itself was mentally exhausting.
but even that, Jay, is the nudging, because chronic
Yeah,
means it's
that
not
was it.
over.
Yeah.
even that you kept expecting for them to say, okay, now we're going to be good. Now you're on the downhill slope. You're going to be, feeling better a little bit every day. And then you're going to feel like you
Right.
again. That was still in your mind, even years after them telling you that, oh no, this is
Yeah.
the word chronic. For
Yeah.
some reason, there was nudging within you that said, mm, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. So
Exactly.
I just have to applaud your
So
nudging and you're remembering that.
yeah. So there's a bigger nudge that comes up. So at this time, my daughter's starting school, and she's taking the bus, and it's a big deal. And we live in an apartment, and the bus stop is just right outside the like where our balcony was. But the rules were, they couldn't leave, just drop the child off. The parents had to be there and make sure that there was the handoff, so they just weren't left. And if nobody was there, then they would take their children back to school and call the parents or whatever. And the big nudging of something has to give, something has to change was um, the day that I missed her bus. I was sleeping. I had a bad night. I was up all night, and I had like a pinched nerve that just wouldn't stop. And I had just fallen asleep after I got her off to school. And you just think it's just for like a couple hours. I
Right.
was zonked. And I missed her bus. And so I went to school. She's, sitting there and kind of looking like, you know, and I was like, I'm fine, I'm fine. And because there was a couple of times when I would go to the bus stop and I would have like my eye mask on and like my robe on. I didn't have curlers or anything, like Linda, how she talks about her curlers. I didn't have curlers, but I had, I slept with an eye mask because I liked it really dark, and I had my robe on, and I'm like, I'm here, bus driver, I'm here, and my daughter would be like, so that was
Isn't
a
it
pivotal point of like,
isn't it amazing
yeah,
how
I
easy
was
it is
thinking,
to
oh
reverse
God,
them?
yeah. I didn't want to be that mom, but at the same time, I didn't want to miss it. So I was like, you don't expect yourself to oversleep, so you're freaking out what's happening, and you're just where to go. So that's what I did, and I realized I had all of that on. So as I'm picking her up from school, and I'm like, something has to change, something has to give. And I was also, when I was feeling okay, I was working for a company called a Ghost in Seattle, and there's a ghost tours that they provide about the underground tunnels and like the history of Seattle and all of that. But on another portion of it, which is strictly voluntary, I was one of three mediums that went around to clear people's houses and speak to anyone who hadn't crossed over or any paranormal problems. And this was so before all of the stuff on TV, all of that hoopla about things. Um, and I really loved my work. I really loved helping people and being able to use my gift. Um, but I couldn't do it the way I wanted to because I was constantly fighting pain and I was tired, and then dealing with that part of spirituality is draining as well.
Right.
So there was this struggle of like, how do I do and help people and do what I love, take care of my daughter? More importantly, how do I get out of this? How do I fix this? Because they just kept saying, you're just going to have it. You have to deal with it. You may be in a wheelchair by the time you're 43. Um,
So you were asking the universe, how do I change this? And when you
yeah,
asked the medical profession, they said, "Oh no, just get used to it, sweetheart. This is it. This is the way it is." But the universe was listening. That's what's amazing.
yeah. I wasn't asking. I was screaming. I was hollering. I was sign language. Because at that point we were teaching my daughter, sign language when she was little. And I was doing anything. I smoke signals, anything I could do to bring in, and I'd always worked with, spirit guides, angels, and God source, but not like I do now. Um, but that was the turning point of just ask, because I fought with the whole, I'm not dying, I'm not suffering, do I have the right to ask? There was a point of like, what is the rank in which I am at, that I feel that I deserve. And that was before, you start to realize that spirit is omnipresent and you're not taking away from somebody down the street who's dying of cancer. If you need the help, ask. And
Right.
just like, it says in many scriptures, ask and you shall receive.
Yep.
And that's how it started.
Right. There's no limit. There's no limit to the spiritual world. And yet we, in our limited beings, tend to put that parameter on our hopes and dreams and wishes. I just am amazed that it kept nudging, that that you kept hearing the nudge, that you kept listening to the inner spirit saying, wait a minute, this doesn't ring true to me. I don't know that I want to believe this anymore. I don't want
Yeah,
to own this. I want to release this. So at
that's what that was.
at that point, did you were seeking out the information, seeking out any kind of um, more knowledge, more wisdom, more connections. What at that point? Because
Yeah,
this is kind of pivotal for you, where you said, you know what? No, I'm going to go left instead of right. I'm not going to follow the path
yeah.
that they told me I had to go on. I'm going to choose a different path, and I'm going to trust that this different path is supported by source, is supported by my spirit, my guides, and I'm comfortable in just taking that chance, taking that adventure, taking that risk of seeking out other wisdom. So, what happened with the next step? How did you seek that out?
Well, between me working for a ghost and trying to raise my daughter and just go through the motions of everyday life, in a marriage, I started to look into. We didn't do the internet at that time. At least I didn't. I've always been more of like a library. I need tangible. I want to look at it. I want to touch it. So I would
Right.
go to the library and look at books. I started looking into um, acupuncture, and I was able to get my insurance to cover that because a lot of the stuff that I was looking into, I realized I'm into it and I want to do it. And then it was like, wait, it's not covered on my insurance, or my husband's insurance. What do I do? And that was also a really hard barrier to contend with because there
Absolutely.
was a lot of things that I felt like could have helped me a lot earlier in my life, but because
Right.
I didn't, it was a bad cycle. I didn't have the strength to constantly work and do what I needed to make the money in order to pay for this. And then in order to pay for it, it just was a constant cycle. I felt like I would never be able to get in because of how I felt. And I kept saying, well, if I can just get this modality help, covered in some way, then I would be able to work and then it would get.
Yes.
So I went to acupuncture and I learned how that went, and immediately I could feel it was like spirit hit or something hit that resonated, and I innately knew something is to this. Even though it's weird and they're sticking needles in, I could literally, I'm that sensitive that I could feel the energy moving through. And
Yes.
I just laid there with all of these pins and I was just like I could just feel that so that was like the beginning. I could feel, I hadn't felt my toes fully, all of my toes, in about a year at that time because
Wow.
I was constantly having pinched nerves. So my fingers would go numb. I would drop stuff. My feet would go numb. Yeah. So it was just things that once I started speaking to more and more people that were like, well, that's not normal. Well, to me, it was normal. Well, you're not supposed to have that till you're 60 something. Well, speak to my doctor because that's what's happening and I
Yes.
have to deal with that. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So I went to acupuncture. I started looking into that type of energy medicine, and that was probably, yeah, I would say the crack of that door that I just ended up trying to trying to really get in through to see what was behind that curtain. Something was changing and I didn't know what at that time, but I knew that I was onto something and I just needed to follow my gut and my instinct. And I started to do that and it took a little longer because there's those times when with Seattle weather, that was another thing that affected everything, the pain of everything. So it rains so much out of the year here. And that was difficult because I had that spark of excitement. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling good, and I would be good. And my days and my weeks started to get a little bit better in length as I got this spark of excitement. And even when I went to my doctor, well, that's great. You know, it wasn't, I still didn't really get an encouragement like, well, let's pursue this route, you
Right.
know?
Yes. Right.
So, and that's not to downplay, you know, like we were saying, what doctors do and what they're about, because I felt that they only knew, they were telling me what they knew. And I felt like my mom is very similar in that way, that we are that tiny percentage that they usually aren't working with or that they don't usually encounter.
Right.
Um, that so I'm the guinea pig. That's how I felt for a lot of the stuff.
Yes.
And then it was that with medication. Try this med, try this med, try this med to deal with this med. Try it. It was, I was just over it. I was over it.
Right.
So that was another, that was a pivotal point,
Right.
is the acupuncture.
Amazing. That's amazing because the ability to trust, even through pain, the ability to trust
Yeah.
that there is a better way, that there is a different way, to understand that, to ask and have that information be given to you. It was really interesting that this morning the message from Kyle Gray says, "Please remember that sometimes the only thing that stands between you and a miracle is the invitation." We forget sometimes when we're in those whirlwinds of pain to ask for assistance, to ask for wisdom and knowledge and opportunity and financial support in order to get those modalities lined up within your life. So even within even within the worst circumstances, the trust element was there spiritually for you. The confidence was there within your guides and angels, and that knowing that even screaming at the universe, that they were listening and that something was
Yeah.
then provided. So the energy work,
Yeah.
did you continue with the energy work, or did it expand into other things?
Yeah. Well, what I also started to have, because at this point I'm asking spirit and I'm allowing and I'm surrendering. But there was that aspect also, I'm medicated. That's a blockage. I'm not receiving the way that I do now
Hmm.
because I was medicated. I was
Yeah.
foggy. I wasn't thinking clear. That's
Right.
just a side effect. Read it here and here and here and here. So it was about, okay, even though the doctor keeps saying, take, 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 I no. And my dad was a big time no with, you know, certain medications. So also you don't want to suffer. So it was this weird push and pull of, okay, just slowly take yourself off of the things that you feel. At this point, I'm speaking to spirit and I'm asking, what is it that I need? Is there anything that I can be directed to fix this that isn't in this way? Because we are taught that the pharmaceuticals are to help in these ways, but
Right.
I didn't know about the holistic part. I knew of it, I just didn't know how to get from where I was to where I wanted to be and who I needed to meet
Hmm.
or cross paths with to find it.
Wow.
And I'm trying to think at this point. Um, at this point was the big, not even a crossroads. It was more like the separation road of um, us trying to continue our education as parents and my health in that. And then the monkey wrench gets thrown in. And I have some medical issues, you know, with some of my, you know, reproductive organs, I guess you could say. And long story short, I had to have surgery. And so, where our plans were going to move and do these things, I couldn't do because where we were going to go didn't have doctor, didn't have specialists for one, but didn't have doctors on call the way I needed them. And their winters, you know, in Eastern Washington, would get feet of snow where you couldn't get out.
Mhm.
And I had just had, the surgery, and I needed to heal. So he continued to, my husband decided to, start his continuation for school, and my daughter and I moved in with my mom and dad so I could recover. And that was the beginning of me and spirit only. Me really giving the lesson from the universe to say, you're on your own in a certain way. You've got your family, you've got the support, but there's certain things that you're being tested, because that was one of the big things that I started to learn. And my one of my greatest quotes that I always have is, you can't really have a testimony without a test. And I had a big test, you know.
Yes. So
I had a
even
big time test.
you had a big task. So even though it felt like a monkey wrench in the beginning, it was actually a blessing. It was actually
Oh,
a
yeah,
gift, right? It was turned out to be a gift for you from the universe. And
yeah,
oftentimes I think that we see things emotionally in the moment of, oh my gosh, now how am I going to handle that? Now, like, what just
right,
happened? Right? What just blew
yeah,
in the window? Because it feels like it's so off base and so unexpected and so unknown. Those elements in life that are not of your doing are often blessings from the universe that we have to take a minute, take a breath, acknowledge what's happening, and then say thank you for the grace and the compassion that's coming through in that moment of pause, in that moment of disruption from whatever the path was leading to. So being home, being in your parents' home, having your new little one there with you, being supported in that way. But it also must have felt a little bit like, uh-oh, because Mark was somewhere else. Your husband was somewhere else.
yeah. It was an oh, it was a freak out. It was at one point, the doctors diagnosed me with separation anxiety, but it was more so like we had done everything together. We had, we were always, when you're with your partner and your other half, and then it separates. So I understand the adjustment, but my mind was one way, but my body reacted in a totally different way. My body flipped out more than my mind. And I was trying to center my mind, body, and spirit, and I didn't know how.
Hmm.
And so it was the surrender of sitting down and weighing out what are the, I have no choices. I have no choice, but I have to do this. Where, and it just kind of was a crying, screaming point of, um, God, if you could just give me a little piece of contentment and ease, and just kind of almost like just that wash of serenity and that encouragement. That's the first step in us working together. Give me something to where I want to mentally get up and walk out of here. And at this time, I'm laid up in the bed. I'm supposed to be laid up as I'm healing. And I started to heal quicker. Um, when that happened, the way angels come to me, I see, like, on the peripheral sides of my eyes, I'll see tiny, tiny, they're almost like little sparks that fly really quickly, depending
Yes.
on the angel.
Yes.
And I started to see those. And I thought it's kind of like when a car goes by really fast and you see the reflection shine on the wall or something. That's kind
Yes.
of how I see some of them. And I
Hmm.
started getting little, like, magical, things happening. And it was like, and at that time, I wanted to scream and shout and have everyone come. But it's that moment that I'm supposed to have, that intimate moment of,
Right.
like, you know, we got you. Like, we're working with you. This is starting. You are surrender. Like, there, I felt that they almost had to wait until I was at a certain point, because in hindsight, I was still holding on to, having that certain amount of support and physical help. I always had, you know, emotional, spiritual help from Mark, but that physical help of, like, okay, well, when my arms lock up and I can't go to the grocery store or drive or do any of those things, um, trusting that somehow I was going to be able to. And sure enough, I just woke up. It was just a matter, I can't even really tell you the time frame. It just felt like overnight, and I know it wasn't, but I was able to walk longer, go to the grocery store longer. And it was like every night was like a high five. It was a wink to spirit. It was what do we get to do tomorrow? And
Awesome.
so in those little moments of paying attention, of starting to slow down my medication so I was clearer, I was thinking more methodically about what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, because I was always scattered. That was really, at this point, everything was rolling. It wasn't rolling fast, but it was rolling. It was
But
changing.
you also had a sense of joy in it, in the accomplishment. In the end of the day, reviewing
Yeah,
and being grateful and saying thank you and high five. All of those
yeah,
things are higher energetic elements that aid in
hmm,
healing, that reset
yeah,
your cells. Joy resets your cells so that they can become perfect
yes,
again, so that they can function again more clearly. And so it's just very
yeah,
exciting. It's very
yeah.
exciting.
And
So did you
go
find
ahead.
did you find more energy to do
Did you
some?
freeze or did I? Go
No,
ahead.
no, you're fine. I don't know if I'm frozen because I always see me
Yeah,
as fine.
I,
So
I, I did find I did find more energy, and I was able to, do things at my daughter's school and do volunteer stuff. And it was amazing because the relationship between my daughter, it was at that phase where she's starting to remember things because she's, at this time in maybe third, fourth grade. And we're, still in the same house and the same schools that I grew up in. So that made me feel good in the way that, like, she understood mommy was still struggling in certain ways, but it wasn't as, because a lot of it, I tried to kind of, no one wants to see their mom in pain. So a lot of times I would, try to at least keep it under wraps, because, it was concerning. But as we started doing more things, and we would go, visit my husband, or he'd come over here, during his breaks, and all of the seasons and all of that, it became an adventure. I never thought I'd be able to drive all the way to Eastern Washington with my kid and hang out and not be laid up for days. So it was
right,
like that. Those were big time, milestones that I was starting to say, I can do this. Like, I can do this. And I was still going to the physical therapy, and, like I said, still trying to kind of taper off, and in that way. And it it just was getting better and better. And there were a couple of times, though, that it would get worse, and that had to do a lot with the weather and my diet, because a lot of times the medication would want me to eat, or I'd be hungry, and, for something I wouldn't normally eat, and it would make me feel like I just wasn't getting enough food. It was like the weird side effect. Um,
weird.
and so I was also gaining weight with some of them too, which was putting stress. So it was about trying to find the balance. And then I realized one night that I had this dream that was really kind of spirit telling me, we're not saying not to listen to the doctors, but just discern how it is you feel when you speak to them and they tell you what you should be doing or how you should be feeling.
Right,
Does it resonate? Do you get So I started working in that way of recognizing when I feel that something resonates and something doesn't. And
right.
that was the beginning of how I also started to work with what spirits were, in that way of, like, this is this spirit, type of energy, and this is that. So I had like a human doctor energy resonance that I was constantly checking, and it was never matching up.
Right.
It was never matching up. So um,
What
at
resources
that point,
did you reach for, knowing that you needed better resources?
well, let's see. At that time, I was still going to the library, getting books. I was talking to different people in physical therapy. Um, there reached a point where I was going to the acupuncturist, and it turned out to be that my nail guy was getting cupping done. when he
Wow.
was sick. He was, yeah. And so he started kind of recommending some books and some different, you know, Ayurvedic herbs and just different ways that I was like, oh, and he understood me because he was that generation that was young enough to where he could explain it to his parents or his, family, and marry it with what he thought, people would be able to, because his dad was a doctor, would be able to use. So some of the herbs and stuff that you would take by tea, he'd end up, putting it in a capsule. And there was a couple of places that were small stores that had these herbs, and I would
Mhm.
try them. And that was kind of the beginning um, until I was really into school and getting all that information and getting all the resources fully through school.
So, what
So,
was it you were going to school for? Was there a degree that you were after, or what was the schooling?
well, every school that or every type of actual, genre that they had, on the list as you're growing up of what do you want to be when you grow up? None of it was spiritual counselor.
Right.
It was either if you were in that aspect, it was church. Otherwise, it was maybe psychology. But I wanted to study metaphysics and parapsychology and basically mix the paranormal with the everyday life and the psychological, and be able to teach and help people understand how that works together, because that's how I was born
Right.
and that's all I knew. And
Yeah.
I knew that I was good at it. I just didn't know how to find a school that could, not that I needed to be taught, but it was something that I kind of wanted to get better at. I wanted to
Validate.
be around like-minded people, validated,
Yes.
and be around like-minded people.
Right.
And yeah, and that was, and up until this point, I couldn't find anything because it didn't exist. Like these online colleges didn't exist. I mean, they had ones that were, all the way in England, and they had certain metaphysical schools, but they were extremely expensive.
Yes.
And I just so happened to find Southwest Institute of Healing Arts in Arizona, and they have such great programs. It was like a little of this, a little of that, and you could kind of mix your classes. But I learned and basically brushed my skills up on everything that I wanted to. It was
Right.
the best. When I started that process, it was the catalyst really was my father passing, because I told him I was going to go to school a little bit before he passed. So from the time of moving in to where, Dad, I'm feeling better. I want to change. Like things are getting better. I feel like I'm strong enough to go to school. Then he passes, and then it's what do you do? And for me, it was, hey, he's on the other side. That's where you work. You What better than to go to school? And so I dove right into it, and it was the best thing ever. Our relationship got better. Um, he immediately, when he passed, he, started working with me as my own guide,
Hmm.
and he still is. Um, but it was a great grieving process. We learned everything from, learning the whole business of how to, use your gift with integrity and use it to, not just basically have people look at it in a holistic fashion of where you are mixing all of the things, the different modalities of healing through herbs and yoga and chakras and crystals and cards if you wanted to. But there were different classes that you could pick and choose, and different type of sacred ceremonies classes I took the psychology of addiction, which was such I think everybody should, because it's not just about drugs and alcohol. You can be addicted to anything. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. But
Yes.
I was able to get into that psychological aspect, and it helps me understand people, a lot better.
Yes.
Because going from trying to help somebody, I always go back to it stems from somewhere, and then I take it even further. It stems maybe from a past life. So there's all of these aspects and layers to which I wanted to help people, not just on this earth, but be able to say, well, maybe, we can look at it from this point.
Yeah.
And it just took off. Yeah, it was really a great experience, and I'm forever grateful because they're the type of school that life happens. So when I would be doing what I'm doing and having a life outside of school, there were times when I'm still trying to help people and I'm getting spiritually attacked. They would take something called spiritual burnout breaks, where you could have a spiritual burnout vacation, to take some
Yep.
time to just step back. And most colleges, yeah, you were attacked by what? Yeah, so what are you talking about? And so they would have people and shamans come, either to your, online forum and help you clear that energy or work through it. I mean, they were so hands on and so helpful, even with my family. And knowing that my daughter has gifts as well, they included her in the ceremonies because
We're
it
gonna
affects everyone.
have to, we're gonna have to
Huh?
provide a link. We'll provide the link for the university if they
Yes,
still
we'll
have that.
provide the link. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll
but
provide.
but that'll be. I'll talk about that. We're gonna do a part two. I think we should do a part two. Um,
Well, there
but
will be many chapters.
all of the way that was. Yeah,
Yes.
there will be many chapters, but I mean that was really the magic. It was kind of like the X-Men movie when you have all these powers, and so do other people that are like you, and you get to practice them and use them and work with guides and
Right.
um, it just opened up a whole new thing. And
Right.
so
Exactly.
after a while, my I started making bracelets and necklaces and jewelry and everything because once I learned how energy works and how quantum mechanics, you know, really changes everything and your frequency, everything changed. My pain started going away faster, for longer periods of time. My brace, they're behind me in my closet in a big bag. I don't ever throw them away because they're that blessing reminder that this is
Wow.
how where you used to be, you know.
Wow.
Um, and I still keep them, but I don't use them anymore. I
Yep.
don't have I don't have the handicap placard. I still keep it, but it's years and years old. Um, my daughter really has very faint memories of the down mommy, the one that was always in bed.
Right.
Now it's, mommy, are you going to go to sleep? Because I'm so excited to just keep going because I can. So
Right.
sometimes, and you've told me as well, Dream Kate, you need to dream, you need to sleep, you need to rest your body. It
Yes,
won't heal
it will
unless
heal.
you
So,
rest.
so I just
You know,
wanted
yeah,
to just take a quick second and point out the three connections. Okay, so
okay.
initially within you, Jay, and within your journey, you already had the built-in connection to God, the connection to Source, the acceptance that
Hmm.
there was higher power, and that was an unquavering, an shakable, foundational piece of who you are, right? The second
Yeah,
point that I want to combine in this soup of healing is the belief that it was possible, right? That not accepting certain words, not accepting the all ending, that's it, door closed, no more, end of subject, the end, that was not real for you, okay? That you had that knowing that impossible was possible, okay? And that it did not need to control your life or your journey or how you proceeded on the planet. And then the third was noticing how the universe hugged you. The universe came in and said, "Hey, we're going to change things
yeah.
up a little bit because you need to rest. You need the quiet. You
Hmm.
need to hear
Yeah,
us. You need to hear and believe and accept the energies and the love from spirit and guides and angels, from loved ones, from ancestors, that is healing energy as you take that in, as you experience them in a
yeah.
way that is intimate, in a way that is a beautiful, loving energy that can go in and reset those cells. But the combination of the
Hmm.
three is what I hear over and over and over again, is this understanding of spirit being connected to God, having a piece of God within us, and that God energy can do everything, It doesn't have to be limited to just what
Yes.
others have been taught to say. And I really want to thank you for sharing the experience with us. We're almost out of time. We were going to do cards. Next time we'll do cards. We'll
I
draw some more.
know.
But it is a blessing to know that it's possible, to know that it's real. And you are living proof of how awesome walking on this planet can be, even when the
Yeah.
body says, hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Living through pain, living through this kind of adventure is tremendous to share, to know that you are
Yeah.
no longer on medications, that you are no longer feeling those things or sensing or having those nerve pain signals, that you can feel your
Yeah.
toes, that you feel more normal again
Mhm.
without it
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for everyone in the chat.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
sharing this with
Yeah,
us.
and I'm sorry I didn't pay attention to the chat so much, but I wanted to kind of just really immerse myself and really get to and kind of almost relive. So I want to thank you for going through this with me because kind of reliving it almost gives you another whiff of, oh wow,
Yes.
you did this, you got this, and the universe kind of became my back brace. It kind of wrapped itself around
Yes.
me and
Beautifully
just
put.
keeps
Yep.
me keeps me upright and keeps me going, and I am forever thankful.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Thank you everyone for being here. Like, subscribe, share. If you know someone that needs a little boost of hope in their healing journey, we hope that you'll share this with them and that it will provide them a piece of hope that they too can do this.
Yep.
So thank you, and until next time, take
Thank
care, and we
you.
love you. And
Okay.
we'll pull cards next time, right?
Yes,
more
and we'll
chapters to
continue
come.
with more chapters
Yeah,
to come. All right.
absolutely.
Bye,
Let's go.
everybody.